Face to Face with Jaimal Ratnayaka.
A very good evening and welcome to a brand new edition of Face to Face, coming to you live and direct from our News First studios here in Colombo. Today is the 21st of October. Bringing you Face to Face this evening, I am Jaimal Ratnayaka for the News First team. As the parliamentary election draws ever so closer, we have invited a former parliamentarian, a public representative who has been in Parliament for several years now, and he is contesting once again from the ticket of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. He is no stranger to the show. My guest tonight is Mr. Eran Wickramaratne, former parliamentarian and current Colombo district candidate of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. Welcome, Mr. Wickramaratne. Welcome back on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Certainly. So, Mr. Wickramaratne, before we go into the more serious matters at hand, how is canvassing, campaigning going on these days? I see you have been allotted or allocated your candidate number. If you could tell our viewers what that number is and how campaigning has been going for the past few days.
Thank you for asking me. It's easy to remember.
Oh, number 5.
It's
right.
number 5. It's easy to remember. Yes, so I've just begun, probably running a little behind the others in terms of launching the campaign.
Yes.
So the campaign, normally people open offices and they advertise their numbers, and then they distribute leaflets, and you need to get with what you, who you are, what you have done, what you are going to do, kind of thing.
Certainly.
Leaflets, and then you try to distribute it, going house to house, the limits to what you can do. And then, of course, meeting people, having meetings, and so forth and so on. I would say something like this: it's to do with the system,
right?
Though we have a proportionate representative system. Earlier, you had an electorate, so you were a member of parliament for. If you take the Colombo district, there are 15 electorates, so you were a member of parliament for Colombo East or for Dehiwala or Morotua or Kotte or whatever. Now the whole district is your campaigning constituency, and there are 1.7 million voters, maybe more than 600,000 probably households. And so you just can't physically, it's impossible to go there, meet them and all that. But people have their expectation, and they will say things like, oh, you're now turning up, right, to see us because of the election. And the truth of it is, though the system changed 40 years ago or whatever, people's minds haven't changed. You see, so that's one thing. And then, like the old system, you have the local representative, and you have 30, 40, probably 1,000 houses, unlike 600,000
and 1.7 million voters.
1.7 million was as opposed to 100,000 or 150,000 voters. And then, it's a big challenge, right? Because there is no local MP. So therefore, our actual responsibility in Parliament is twofold. One is we are legislators, so we are there to make sure that laws are fashioned and implemented and passed properly. That's the first responsibility, the legislative responsibility. The second responsibility is to look at finance, because a rupee cannot be collected or a rupee cannot be spent without the approval of Parliament. These are I would say, the two main co-functions of a member of Parliament. But people sometimes, you get off in an area and they will say, my road needs a, paving,
needs to be redone,
or the drain needs to be cleaned or something. So there is local government for that, but they still think that the member of Parliament is responsible. So there is a little bit of confusion and a gap that's there. So I am an advocate that we need to actually change the electoral system.
Right.
I think and we can go for a mixed system. So instead of having 160 electorates, maybe you can have 100 electorates.
Right.
It can be looked at it. And then you appoint a member for each of those 100 electorates. 100 is not cast in stone. I'm just
illustrating a ballpark figure.
Illustrating it. And you have the 100 electorates or whatever, and then you have a member of Parliament for a smaller geographical area. And then you have the others on the proportional representative basis.
Right.
So you have a mixed system.
of, yeah.
Countries like Germany have it. So you have a local member of parliament and you have others who come in as well. Maybe get rid of the national list. Because if you have the balance of this. So I certainly see this system as wanting, you see, and it doesn't meet the expectations of the people, and then members of parliament end up not really doing the things they should be doing, which is, right, basically we are there to make laws and we are there to make sure that government expenditure, government budgeting, government revenue, right, to look at it and to see that it is approved and properly done. Even the president cannot spend a single rupee unless it is approved by parliament. And so we have that function, and then our function is also holding the executive to accountability.
Checks and balances.
Checks and balances. And Parliament has several committees. It has a finance committee, it has COPE, is a committee on public enterprises, there's a COPA, you know, on other public institutions.
And other sectoral oversight committees.
And a lot of sectoral oversight committees. So that's the role really of parliamentarians. So when we elect parliamentarians, right, and we are saying the primary functions are making laws and then looking at finance and accountability, and then we are sending people sometimes who don't have the background to do it, and then we look at the parliament and the behavior in it, and often we end up criticizing it. So I think that there are two sides to it. Of course, those of us who are there need to know how to behave, how to conduct ourselves and all that. But I think voters also have a responsibility to make sure
out those who are actually committed and also who deserve to be in parliament.
Yeah, who can actually fulfill the role of a parliamentarian.
Right. So, Mr. Wickramaratne, I was just going through your socials because we know social media plays a big role in campaigns these days, especially when it comes to politics. And earlier today you had uploaded a video detailing what a perfect parliamentarian should have, and you had listed down 3 principles. The first principle being people of ethics and high integrity should be in parliament. The second principle is educated people. They should have a good education, formal or university, whatever. Third principle is experience. And you also made a very interesting mention. You say it's a pool of mud, but that doesn't mean you should get muddy. How does Eran Wickramaratne, who has been in parliament and, like you say, the proverbial pool of mud, how has Eran Wickramaratne made sure that he doesn't get at least a patch of mud on him?
Thank you for asking the question. I must say that the video that was uploaded was not something that was done for this campaign. It was some time ago when I was addressing an audience of professionals and others.
But it was uploaded recently.
It was uploaded recently, and I was basically talking to them.
Right. Okay.
And I was saying that, you know, if we are really going to transform this country, right, we have to look at who we put into the leadership of the country. So parliament is one important place, and the executive branch of government comes out of parliament. Now you have countries like the United States of America where the president is directly elected, the cabinet is his appointees, and then you have the legislative branch separately. But in the Westminster system, the executive comes out of parliament. Sri Lanka is like that. Though we have a directly elected president, the others come out of parliament. So getting it right in terms of actually appointing the right people, I like that you raised that. The principles are clearly, it has to be people of integrity, right, and people without allegations, or certainly people without convictions. There are people in our parliament who have sat with convictions, including murder, convicted of murder and sworn in by the speaker. I just can't forgive the speaker for doing a thing like that. He should have at least said, we'll wait till your appeal is over before you can be sworn in, rather than swear you in while you have been convicted by a court of law. So I mean, this is unacceptable. We have to clean this system up. We have to really clean it for the sake of our children and the future generations. So first principle would be that. Second principle, as you said, is education. Because the world is complex, society is complex, we are getting globalized, right? And we need people, education helps you in that it trains your mind to be, to think, to analyze, to compare, to understand what happens in the rest of the world, to see what's relevant, what's not relevant, to understand your own culture, and and then see, what are the things, that we should uphold, what are the things that need a change. So education helps, because the main thing is, and people keep asking me things like, what did you study in university? I said, what I learned in university is to think. Whether it's physics, chemistry, or whether it's economics or finance is secondary. It's your ability to think. That's what an education should actually do, because things keep changing so fast. What we learn by the time we come out of university sometimes
might be more advanced.
Might seem far more advanced. But if we are taught to think, we can keep adapting ourselves. So learning is a lifelong exercise.
Yes.
So that's why I say education is important. And the third thing, right, is, and I would say, though I call it third, it's more important than education, is experience, you see. And the reason I say that is, in my parents' generation, very few had a formal education. But when you think about them, right, and I often think about my mom, right, she was very much more experienced than me. And she had wisdom, you see. What we have often is knowledge, but not enough wisdom. You see, you need knowledge and wisdom, you see, in actually being a leader. You see, so you can gather a lot of information, but how you interpret the information, you need to have discernment, because there are so many different things, and particularly when it comes to social, economic, and politics, there is no right and wrong answer. You see, there's a spectrum, and you have to decide where in the spectrum is best. Exactly, and what's best for the community and for the country. And that's why I said it goes beyond just having information and data. You need to have the knowledge in doing it. So experience is important, because without experience you can't do it. You may have a university degree, but that doesn't mean that you can necessarily translate it to basically improving society or improving the country. Experience helps. It's a simple thing, like even if you have a company, right, you don't, and I'm not looking down on any particular person, but you don't generally put your security guard as a CEO of the company. That's a separate set of skills. Becoming CEO is a separate set of skills, more to do with management and thinker, strategizer, planner, and somebody who understands all the spheres of it, who can put it together. So experience is important, otherwise you can't. I mean, somebody frivolously said, Eran, can you cook one day? And I said, I make a contribution at home, but I said my contribution is certainly not cooking, because I said there are many other people there who know it much better.
You are suited for other things at home.
I was suited for other things, and that doesn't mean that I can run away from my responsibilities at home. But, right, I was illustrating the point that yes, I do things at home, but experience does matter, otherwise everybody will be complaining, that the food is not tasting good. But we have ended up like that. We have lots of people who have been, leading this country, no experience, and they are making a mess of it. The food doesn't taste good, right? It may be food, but it's not tasting good. So I think those principles are very critical. Again, I repeat, personal character and integrity. When we choose representatives at every level, parliament, provincial councils, local councils. Second, experience, critical. Thirdly, education. Then some people have asked me, why don't you all legislate that only educated people could be public representatives? I'm against that principle, because as I said, there are people with experience who may not have a formal education, and they need to be included. And also it's a human right. You're representing people, and people decide that somebody should represent them, they should be permitted. But this, this is the secret, okay? The secret is that other countries, at the nomination stage, right, those three principles that I talked about, they adopt the three principles. And as a result, they normally put, of course, people of good character, and they normally put experienced people. and then educated people. So the nomination stage. So parties and party leaders have that responsibility, while we uphold the human right that anybody could represent, but party leaders have the responsibility. So in Sri Lanka, political party leaders have often failed there, because they haven't really nominated those who are suitable. Even in countries like Singapore, which is often talked about, sometimes they go and fetch and look for the politician, and they look for people who are, you know, sometimes in the commercial sector, those who are working, or in the public sector.
They're headhunted.
They are headhunted.
Like the corporate.
Like the corporate, absolutely right. And then they are brought in, right, and they are told, okay, you can, you know, you come, we need you in health or in education or in social welfare or whatever the area is, and it's a 5-year commitment, and then you can go back if you like to, or you can stay on if you want to make politics a career. Now I would go one step further. I firmly believe that to change anything, you need to have the right leadership, whether it is a school, and the practices of the school, and really giving a wholesome education depends on the leadership and the principal. I had principals like that. When I was in a junior school, I had a principal called H.P. Jayawardena. Right, he had a holistic view of education, from culture, singing and things like that, to sports,
then to academics,
and then to academics, a holistic thing, and he drilled it into us. And this was when I was from 5 years to 12 years, in the primary, right? He drilled it to us. So kind of a wholesome approach in how to do it. So if we look at the whole picture, right, our leaders need to have a holistic approach in actually taking the decisions that they are taking, and that's how I think a country can really advance. So leadership is critical. It's critical, and therefore I think when decisions are being made, I don't think we could just blindly make it saying, oh, we are voting for a party, and then it doesn't really matter who is there, because this is legislative. The other thing is, the point I would make is, we need to see parliament and government as collaborative. Sometimes we feel that, okay, if you have a president from one party, maybe somehow or other you need to figure out whether the parliament and the government can come from the same party.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like that. There are many countries in the world, the president has come out of one party, right? Maybe the Republican Party, right? And then you have had the opposite. The American system can't be strictly compared because the executive branch of government goes that way. But the legislature may be democratic, whether it's a Senate or Congress or whatever, different party. You take France, for example, right? President Macron came from a smaller party when he originally came, but there were lots of other parties in
We've had that in Sri Lanka from time to time as well.
We've had that in Sri Lanka from time to time as well. But then people look at the negative and say, oh, but they didn't work together. But I say, don't look at it like that, because compare the whole period and compare the whole period where you had the president and the parliament from the same party, whether it was UNP or Sri Lanka Freedom Party or SLPP, right? You compare it, right? And then you compare the other ones as well. So I think that there is no fixed rule about it. I think it's more about, are the people who are there, whether it's a president or whether it's the government, are they thinking alike? Because a government is formed in this system out of the party that has the largest number of seats in parliament.
Yes.
That's the party that forms the government. And certainly SJB, we are campaigning to form a government, and I can see lots of areas in which we can collaborate with the current president. Lots of areas I can see that. And I also can see that if we don't go in there, there are lots of areas in which the other party might fail, right? And that would be to the detriment of the country. And therefore we need to look at it in an open-minded but holistic manner.
Understood. My guest this evening is Mr. Eran Wickramaratne, Colombo district candidate of the Samagi Janabalawege. There's much to discuss, but we will cross over now for a short commercial break. Stay tuned to Face to Face. We will be right back.
News First, face to face with Jaimal Ratnayaka.
A trusted place for your fixed deposit. Valuable FD, a symbol of stability.
Conquering the grand finale of Sri Lankan reality, emerging victorious in the ultimate battle of extraordinary talent. We crown the unbeatable champion.
Sri Lanka's Got Talent Season 2 Grand Finale. Jaya Ravindra Kumara.
News First, face to face with Jaimal Ratnayaka.
Welcome back to Face. My guest this evening is Eran Wickramaratne, Colombo District candidate of the Samagizana Balawege and of course former parliamentarian. Mr. Wickramaratne, before we crossed over for the commercial break, we were talking about leadership, what it takes to be in parliament, ideally, who should be in parliament, what not. Let's talk about the Samagizana Balawege or the Samagizana Sandhana that is contesting the parliamentary election this time around. During the presidential election, your presidential candidate and leader, Sajid Premadasa, propped up his team more than himself. He said that he has the best team out of the candidates who were vying for presidency to take Sri Lanka out of this crisis and take it towards economic prosperity. And that core team, the core economic team, is formed by yourself, Dr. Harsha De Silva and Mr. Kabir Hashim. Since the presidential election, gearing up to the parliamentary elections, how has the SJB managed to expand that team of individuals who have experience in other sectors, in other industries, to present the best possible combination of candidates to the people at this particular election?
Yes, I mean, now we are not, in a sense, we are not a completely new party.
Yes.
Because lots of people came from other parties and the United National Party. So when you're a party which has a history, it's different to a party which is formed tomorrow.
Right.
It's a party which is formed, sorry, not tomorrow, yesterday. If it's formed yesterday, you can bring in a lot of new people and nobody will know.
Okay.
Right? And then everybody is a new face. Ours is always a balance because you have the experienced people who have been there, and then we have to keep putting new faces. So that's the balance, and balance has always caused a little bit of tension, and that's not unusual. So we have tried to do that. And if you even take let's take even the Colombo district list, or you take the national list of this SJB, you have lots of professionals there. You have lots of capable people. You have medical personnel, you have lawyers, you have professors from the universities.
Right. Can you name a few in the interest of the viewers?
Yeah, on our national list we have Dr. Mahim Mendes, we have Professor Surya Bandara, and then we have people with experience who have been in politics and who have come in as well in different ways. We have attorney at law like Upul Jayasuriya, we have Ravi Jayawardena, we have a whole number of people. We have a young lawyer, attorney Lihini Fernando,
former municipal councillor. Yes,
and then we have another Professor Chandima Vardana.
So that's the national list.
This is the national list. I'm saying is there's a range of people and range of good people, in addition to some experienced politicians like our chairman Imtiaz Bakir Makana, General Secretary
Rajat
Bandar, but lots of people like this. Then if you look at the contesting, that's always a challenge, because three reasons. One reason is this system. You need enormous amounts of resources in this system. That's why I'm arguing for a change in the system. You see that, so it's
but unfortunately we are made to work within this system.
Yes, for this election I'm hoping
it might change.
that it might change. You see, as we go forward. So I would say compare the teams, ours as theirs, and compare the backgrounds and compare the experience levels. I think that's also critical and very important in the legislature. Now, in working together, I would say it like this. If you look at the president, he came on if you want, his USP was Horuallamu. Let's catch the rogues.
The current president.
The current president's USP.
Right.
So now I would say this, that program that he promised to deliver on is something that we will absolutely support. We need to clean up this system. And he's committed that, we will be supporting him. I would go as far as saying to him, right, let's strengthen the powers of SEABOC. That's Anti-Corruption Commission.
Yes.
Let's strengthen their powers. Give them not just investigative powers, but even prosecutional powers. Right? Let's bring in the new law, which we have drafted. Right? We have drafted as SJB, the Stolen Assets Recovery Law. Because that allows you then to also work internationally, because stolen assets may be hidden in different
regions,
countries, and so to get at that. And then we need to have an independent public prosecutor's office. This is absolutely important. For years I have been saying this. I've been going and studying it, because the Attorney General's Department has certain conflicts, inbuilt conflicts, because they are the lawyer for the government, and then right, they also have to prosecute the same people they are lawyer for. So this is important, because it could be set up quickly. So I would say to the current president, right, who has made this his highest priority, these are some fundamental things that he needs to do very, very quickly. And if we are in government, we will be supporting the president on this for sure, because we want to see this done. Then the current president has been talking about rule of law. Absolutely important, absolutely necessary, the rule of law, they say. And we will be supporting him completely on the rule of law. One law for everybody. You can't have a politician falls ill, he goes to hospital, and the politician is caught doing something wrong, he is sent to a hospital, a normal person is taken and put in a remand. This is totally unacceptable. So the rule of law must apply, and must apply to everybody equally. We will completely support that in the president's agenda. Then he says that he wants to bring constitutional reform. Right, and constitutional reform, he wants to abolish the executive system. I'll be raising both my hands.
Right.
Okay. And our party will be supporting it. If he wants to change the electoral system, and we have debated this long, and in the debate we have said, let's go for a mixed system. So you have lesser, you have directly elected MPs for constituencies, and you have on the proportional representative principle, others can be accommodated. So there's a balance, so you don't shift from one to the other extreme. There's a balance, but it's better for the country, it's a better system.
Yes.
We will be supporting a mixed system, if the president, in his agenda, he has mentioned constitutional reform. There are other reforms in the constitution that need to be brought in. We certainly will support him. He implement the constitution, the 13th Amendment, right? Implement the 13th Amendment.
Full capacity.
Implement it fully. Implement the 13th Amendment. If there are certain misgivings or whatever, those can be looked at worked out at a practical level. But implement the language provisions of the constitution. You say every citizen is equal in this country.
It seems like, judging by what you have been saying for the past 2.5 minutes or so, that for the most part you seem to be seeing eye to eye with the current president and his agenda. At least for now, we are yet to see what transpires, but it seems like you see eye to eye with the current president and his plan when it comes to the law, when it comes to combating corruption, when it comes to governance. What are the things that you do not see eye to eye with the current president?
Yeah, so that's why I said, if we are the party with the highest number of seats in parliament, we will form a government, right? We will form, Sajid Premadasa will be the prime minister of that government, and then we will form a government, and we will support those things I said, which already the president has taken to the country and he has got a mandate for.
Right.
But we can't ignore that mandate because the people have given that mandate. I think where we will be very useful for the country is particularly on the economy.
Right.
And I think this is very, very important. So one principle is macroeconomic stability.
And sorry to bother you, is that where you assume, or is that where you believe that the current president needs assistance?
Yes, I think so, because just judging by the statements that are coming, even in this short period, and even before, in the run-up to the presidential election, there were lots of contradictions that were coming.
Right.
You know, the president would say something else, then somebody in his party, the JVP, and Politburo members, would say something contradictory.
Right.
And the reason they would say a contradictory thing is, it was not a mistake, because they have been saying those things for the last 30-40 years. You see, and so hearing it from them again was nothing new for us, and they were going. Whereas there were some, right, who had changed their stance. They had moved their position, you see, and that's good. Good to see they move it. But I can see that some of this could come to a conflict within, you see. So if I were to detail it a little bit, that, you know, macroeconomic stability will require raising revenues, right, cutting wastage, you know, and reducing corruption. We can agree on that. But cutting wastage and all means you have to have public sector reform as well. You see, this is absolutely important. I never blame a public servant for the state of the public service in the country.
Yes.
I blame the politicians because they just added people to win elections. Willy-nilly they added people. Instead of that, if they had actually given those resources, because in the public service you have some of the brightest minds in the country, and if you had given them the resources, one is they should have been given market compensation. Two is lots of money should have been spent on skilling and reskilling and, you know, and training. Lots of money should have been spent, like we do in the private sector, right? And we would have had a world-class public sector, right? And we should still do that. We should still go there. You see, because the public sector is absolutely important. It's a prerequisite for a country to really develop. You know, people think that the private sector can do it. No, they can't do it. They can do
It's a synergy.
Yes, a synergy. Only if they have a public sector on par. It's only then that a country will succeed. It can be done. It can be done. We believe in it, right? So, but the thing is, when the reforms start to come, I think there may be some internal issues, because for a long time, right, parties like the JVP have said, you know, things to the contrary. Then if you look at on the macro side, on the revenue, I agree that certain reliefs need to be given to people. Yes, and that promises have been made. But the real issue is, if you do that, then you have to raise revenue from elsewhere, because the IMF program has to stay in place. There is no question about it. Sri Lanka needs to come out of its current bankruptcy and ratings to access the global markets.
And the IMF program is the best way to do it.
And the IMF program is the
only way to do it?
The only way to do it at the moment, because we have to can't get on the ratings ladder. And then we can attract international investments. So the macroeconomic stability is important. So you have price stability, inflation, then you will have interest rate stability, and you have exchange rate which is largely stable. So this framework. Then state-owned enterprises, they have to be reformed, right? And some of the people who are with the president and very senior people, you know, they are all not for the reforms in that particular way.
So do you agree with the recent decision by the current administration not to sell Sri Lankan Airlines and to develop it as a state-owned entity?
No. I must tell you the truth, I don't agree with that. That's why I said, sometimes you hear comments like this. I'm saying, right, have an open mind. A state-owned enterprise should exist if it is strategically important for a country. That means that the government of the country invests in it. So the ownership, the capital is put by the government. And there can be some areas, right, in terms of security, in terms of food security, you know, some areas like that which investment is needed, and direct government investment, right? In other areas, right, you know, some institutions, right, should be closed down, right, because if they are not adding value
in its entirety,
if they are not adding value, it must add value to the citizen. It must add value. If it's not adding value, some give it over to the Sri Lankans, the citizens of this country, the private sector. Right? They can run it efficiently and create value, right, and give it over. Some may be private-public partnerships. So there are models to do all of this. And what we are saying is that we are committed to it, the President may be committed to it, some members of the NPP will be committed to it, but don't underestimate that there are people in there who have for a long time, for decades, believed otherwise. People who believe in the basic Marxist principle that the means of production and distribution should be in the hands of the state. We don't believe in that.
Right.
I'm also left-leaning in the sense of social protection, right, and protecting vulnerable people, but not in the idea that the production and the means of distribution should be in the hands of the state. So that's where the tension could be there. But if we form a government with the President, right, I think
we will make a cocktail of all of those all of those dynamics or ideologies to bring the best possible course of action for Sri Lanka.
That's right. And it will be a pragmatic way forward, and it will be for the better of the country.
Right. So, Mr. Wickramaratne, this is all very well and true what you said, and I agree for the most part with what you said. And you're a very honorable politician. You have been so since you entered Parliament all those years ago, and you are very sincere, and I know you will give me a sincere answer to this question as well. You spoke about internal conflicts, and in recent days the SJB has been the topic of discussion owing to its very own conflicts internally. Firstly, it was former Member of Parliament Ajit Peruma, then it was actress Damita Beratne, then it was former Member of Parliament Hirunika Premachandra, who is also the organizer of the convener rather of the Samagi Vanita Balawegaya. So there have been certain dilemmas or differences of opinion within the party itself, and the most recent statement made by Hirunika Premachandra claiming that there was a secret entity who is not in the political sphere, and that certain entity is pulling strings. Do you have any information of that entity? Is there such an entity? What is the entity she is hinting at?
I haven't seen that comment actually. And
this was last Wednesday, when she had gone to hand over her resignation letter as the convener of the Samagi Vanita Balawegaya, and she said that there are certain entities who are not in the political sphere who are trying to influence the party, and she said that she is displeased with having to listen to criticism from such people. That is the mention she made. And even the General Secretary Ranjit Madhu Bandara was seated next to her, and there has been a lot of discussion among social circles where, yes, the Samagi Jana Balawegaya has a great team, and we know that these people are actually willing to take Sri Lanka out of this rut to work towards the progression of Sri Lanka. But if the house is not in order, how can the people have confidence in those who are contesting or in the party as a whole?
Yeah, I think that it's not unusual that in a democratic setup, that people can have different views, right? And they can express their different views. Yes. That does not necessarily mean that that becomes a part of the party's policy. You say it doesn't kind of work like that. So when you say that there is an entity, I think the word entity may be incorrect, because I'm not aware of an entity. There's always, when there are leaders, there's always accusation that leaders are being influenced by certain individuals and people.
Have you personally felt that there is such an influence?
I think that that's nothing unusual, whether it is leaders. If you look right down the line, there always that has been there, and that's nothing very unusual, right? That because every leader has basically people who he will be talking to and be hearing. I think the thing is this: I mean, listening to people is fine. Right, and getting the different views, and some of those can be officials, some of them can be people you have known over a period of time, right?
The
and
unofficial advisors.
Unofficial, in the people who are there. The real thing of a test of a leader is after you have heard everything, it's in the decisions that you make, and you need to make the right decisions. So I don't think it's going to be unusual to have people who will be coming and whispering in your ear and things like that. That's not unusual. That happens to every leader. I can think of all the leaders, and I can think of people who also supported leaders like that. But I think the important thing is this. Now you referred to things like MP Ajit Mana Peruma. I have never talked to him or anything like that. So what I'm saying is what I read in the media. Yeah, that's unfortunate because I think that when you're in a party, you may disagree sometimes with the party's policy. You may disagree with the party's leader or one of the top leaders in the party. And that's not unusual, right? And what we do normally is within the structure, we bring our differences out, we voice it, and we try to influence the decision-making process. I come from a corporate background, and I'm quite used to that.
Used to it, yes.
I'm CEO of a bank. I had a board, and there was senior management, and we would take our issues. Sometimes there would be a clash with the board, nothing.
But you settle your differences.
And we settle our differences there. And final decision they make may be what I held, or may not be what I held. But when I come outside the door, I uphold the brand of the bank, you see, and that's the process. Now, unfortunately, some of these people haven't really worked like you and me in a corporate setup, and so when the differences are there, sometimes they come and
there can be friction.
Yes, and they say it publicly,
lashing out,
which you shouldn't be doing it, which you shouldn't be doing. The differences will always be there, and differences are also good because you get a better result at the end of it because you are being challenged by others in your thinking. So that
to improve your decision making.
It improves it. So I would say in his case, okay, if he had a difference, I think what he should have done is actually voice those things before you sign a nomination paper, and then say, even if I'm leaving, that's fine. You see, because I feel so different about it. And I must say about that lady, Damita Aberaratne,
how her nomination was cut off.
I think it's very unfortunate. I think if the nominations committee has decided to give her the nominations, after the nominations committee has decided,
it should be final.
It's final. I'm not talking about individuals, I'm just talking about the principle. There's no way that anybody's name could be cut off after that. If they want to change it, they'd go back to the nominations committee, and the nominations committee
call for an amendment.
Call for it and amend it, and that must be followed. I can't defend bad processes, even if it's happening.
So if you're in a table where such a decision is being made, potentially, will you oppose it?
Yes, I mean, I'm talking of the process here.
Yes.
I mean, I'm no comments on the individual. That's up to the nominations committee to look at it. But the nominations committee has looked at it and approved it. Once they have approved it, it basically stands. If somebody wants a change, or there is something that maybe the nominations committee is not aware, they should go back to the nominations committee. And the nominations committee, the original authority putting it, is the one who should actually be changing it. I think these are fundamental, and we must follow these fundamental processes. So that was, I think, not acceptable.
These three incidents have somewhat created a doubt in the minds of the people. But now, can you give an assurance to our viewers and the society at large that the SJB is in fact a steady, stern ship, and it is not a sinking ship?
Yeah, I must say this, right? These three incidences are being highlighted, right? But these three incidences don't shake the party, right? If you look at it, one MP saying that I don't agree with the policy or with the leaders of the party, I mean, that can be on one side. Then somebody else saying that, okay, leaders are being influenced by particular individuals or whatever. I don't think they shake parties. All leaders are being influenced. I heard this in the UNP. I heard this when the SLFP presidents were there. I've heard this kind of comments, and that's not unusual.
And you're confident that your leader won't be swayed by sentiments, and he'll stay true to his convictions.
Yes, because that's what leadership is. You can hear different views coming from different sources. There can be different views coming from different sources, but then when you have to make a decision, right, that you actually consult it. I would make this general comment, right? The general comment I would make is Sri Lankans are still not used to the idea of a full democracy.
Right. Why do you say so?
Yeah.
Very quickly.
And the reason I say that is, you know, when I left school, I joined the Old Boys Union. And, you know, I was on that committee. And then before we went for the next meeting, we would among ourselves say who should succeed us, you know, as president or treasurer or secretary. And if a nominations comes from the House, suddenly, once we get there, my heavens, people are very uneasy about it. That's because we are not quite used to the principle of democracy. It's the same in political parties, not used to the principle of democracy.
Right.
So that deficiency is there. But that deficiency is there not just in the SJB. It's there in the UNP. My heavens, in the UNP it's worse. Because you have had the same leader for over 30 years and no change.
This is what we saw in 2020.
That's right, all political parties, and it's a South Asian phenomena, and therefore we need to get used to actually having a lot more internal democracy, which will actually improve everything and improve it for the sake of the country.
Understood. There is much more I want to discuss with Mr. Wickramaratne, because he is, in fact, he harbors a wealth of knowledge, and I want to discuss many things with him, although we have run out of time for tonight's episode of Face to Face. Mr. Wickramaratne, thank you very much for joining me this evening amidst your very busy schedule campaigning to be in Parliament once more, and we hope that the citizens will decide to vote for you and the Samagi Janapala Vega, and next time I will see you as a Member of Parliament once more.
Thank you, Jamal. Thank you for inviting me.
Definitely. And that's the way it was on Face to Face this evening. Thank you very much for stopping by. We will be joining you tomorrow, same time, same place. Stay tuned. Good night.